Eid and beyond.
Right.
So for people, I think we'll give another minute or two, but as people start to join, I guess we'll introduce ourselves.
Sounds
I'm
good.
Shireen Soliman, and I am a professor, and I have been in education for over 20 years. I'm also a parent myself. I also am a community advocate and organizer, and I am a Muslim American. I'm an Egyptian American living here in New York City. So I look at education and community from all different angles, as I think you do as well. I'll pass to you, Sister Jan.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. My name is Jehan Hakim, and I am also Arab American, specifically Yemeni American. I'm also a mother, culture responsive educator, not for 20 years. I want to say so I've left the classroom. It's been a really long time, maybe 15-ish years. I'm also a community organizer. So oftentimes when you are Arab and Muslim, I mean, I think that a lot of cases for brown folks in general, you tend to wear many hats or hijabs, where you're advocating for your community from many different avenues, right? Whether it's like socially, politically, for when it comes to education. So we kind of step in to fill the gaps, unfortunately, because we live in a society that really loves to underserve and underrepresent us.
Yeah, to say the least. So, as they say, if there is not a seat at the table, you make that seat at the table. And so that's a lot of work, I think, in the background that we talk about and we try to make visible, that invisible work, trying to make visible.
Right.
And so, Alhamdulillah, you and I already spoke about, the challenges of students, faculty, administrator, community in learning, teaching and learning spaces while we're balancing Ramadan and learning. And so I think we wanted to kind of this time, and I think we did sort of more broad strokes in our first roundtable. And I think this time, maybe you and I can talk about again a little bit more, real world case studies, best practices, some solutions from our own lived experience, which I think really helps it again too, from all of the different dimensions of how we've been involved in education, in front of the classroom, behind our own children, and holding hands, in all these different spaces. What are the ways that understanding our experience can strengthen as we're entering into, inshallah, God willing, Eid next week.
Mhm.
So, and then, and beyond, these are
Right.
strategies for the whole year long. So,
Right.
Sister Jihan, maybe if you would like to get us started, let's talk about this Eid coming up, inshallah. Can you tell us what is the holiday, a little bit more about it?
Sure. Before I do that, let me just remind folks that our previous, episode or roundtable, the very first one, is on YouTube, and you can find it in my bio, and we can share it, inshallah, at the end as well if you guys want to kind of go back and get a recap. I think I think a lot of folks may have missed it because we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. But really quickly, what is Eid? A lot of the Arabs, the word Eid is an Arabic word. We oftentimes use that word for celebration, occasion, whatever it is, like Eid Milad, like it's a birthday, for example. But specifically when it comes to religious holidays, Eid is, there are two major Islamic holidays. The first one is Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan, which, like Shireen mentioned, it's going to take place about the 9th or the 10th of April. And the second one is called Eid al-Adha, which is the festival of the sacrifice that occurs during the culmination after the Hajj, which Shireen will go into in more depth afterwards. Um, the Islamic calendar differs from the Gregorian calendar because it follows the cycle of the moon rather than the cycle of the sun. So, but the two calendars both have 12 months, and that's not why oftentimes we don't know exactly when is Eid, and that sometimes affects when we need to take time off from school or work because we have to wait until we've sighted the moon. But the difference is maybe like a day or so, so it's not too much of a difference. So in a nutshell, that's what Eid means. And then we can go into kind of, you'll hear more from how we celebrate. So yeah, pass it back to you, Shireen.
Okay, so as you just mentioned, as the Islamic calendar is a very strictly foundational lunar calendar, we have 10 to 11 days each year that are different from the Gregorian calendar that we follow universally. And so, because as you mentioned, because of that, Ramadan, so many times I see, hear from non-Muslims, oh, I thought it was in the summer. Wait, wasn't it at the end of the year, right? So kind of just being aware of that difference in terms of we talked about this, I think maybe I talked about it last time, in terms of understanding time differently, moving from like decolonizing our understanding of time as it's linked to capitalism, as it's linked to these very very rigid structures. So we have something that is a little bit more fluid. There's more connection to the moon and nature, and as such we wait for the moon sighting so that we understand the actual beginning of the next month. And so the last day, so the beginning of the next month, Shawwal, will be either Tuesday or Wednesday, inshallah, of next week. But I'll also throw in, to make it even more complex, there are different communities who saw the moon and they declared their moon sighting a day after some others declared their moon sighting. So then as such, you might even have students, for those of you in the education spaces, who will be celebrating on Thursday of next week, depending on if Ramadan is a month that has 29 days or 30 days. Once we establish the day for Eid al-Fitr, then we move into Eid al-Adha, and Eid al-Adha will be about 2 months after that, because that's the 12th month of the Islamic calendar. So once again, Ramadan is just the name of the month, and then 2 months later, for Dhul Hijjah is when pilgrims will be performing the Hajj, the sacred holy pilgrimage is one of the pillars of our religion. The difference between Eid al-Fitr is that as it's coming at the end of this of a solemn fast for a month, it's a celebratory, jubilant time, and so it's very much you'll see much more festivities. There'll be toys and games, and a little bit more of a celebratory feeling to close out that month. But Eid al-Adha is coinciding with, again, too, the sacrifice of Prophet Abraham. And so our Abrahamic brothers and sisters from other faiths will have known the story and the willingness to be able to sacrifice and to follow the guidance of God. So because we honor that sacrifice, we also will find in Muslim communities all around the world, people will be offering, they will be sacrificing animals to distribute the meat as charity for those maybe who have less. So there's more of a focus on sacrifice. There's a solemnity there, and that will be about 2 months later. So that's approximately scheduled for this year. If people want to kind of like have that on their radar, that's June 17th of this year, inshallah. So how do
Awesome.
you week? How are you going to be celebrating, Sister Jan?
Yeah, why really quickly, I just wanted to mention that Adha, the word Adha means sacrifice. So it's the Eid, or the holiday of sacrifice. So yeah, thank you for breaking that down. So how we celebrate, there's a wide array of Eid traditions around the world. Um, one universal theme is going to the Eid prayer at a mosque, for example.
Mhm.
Collectively getting dressed, wearing new clothing, wearing your best, and going as a congregation, meeting as a congregation at the mosque and performing the ritual Eid prayer. There is usually a short sermon, and then there's a short prayer, and then Muslims will gather and hug each other and give each other salam, tell each other Eid Mubarak. So folks tend to ask, how do we wish Muslims a happy Eid? So it's Eid Mubarak, which means have a blessed Eid in Arabic. Um, I think it's totally okay for people to say happy Eid, but I think it's also the best practice is for you to learn the way we do greet each other, which is Eid Mubarak. And you'll find this word Mubarak constantly in a lot of our traditions. For example, you'll see Ramadan Mubarak, Eid Mubarak, or the word blessed is a constant theme when it comes to how we celebrate and honor different traditions. Um, in my house, for example, we decorate. We have lights inside, and we have like Ramadan Kareem outside to let our neighbors know. We also offer our neighbors, sweets or pastries or kak or Arab little biscuits or cookies. And What else do we do? You'll see the Quran being played in the home a lot, or maybe different nasheeds, different songs. Um, and what we mentioned about the calendar, that's another thing to keep in mind too, is that when folks want to request time off of work for Eid, we'll sort of wait. We have to wait until we've sighted the moon, in order to know exactly when we're going to take the time off. There are a lot of cities around the US that have made Eid a paid holiday for city employees. Like, for example, Hamtramck, and Dearborn of Michigan have made those holidays off, like days off, even for people that are not Muslim, which I think is amazing and is an amazing act of solidarity, which other people can benefit from. There are also other cities that have made Eid an actual like citywide holiday. And where I used to work in Oakland of California, Oakland Unified School District, we passed a resolution to make Eid a holiday in the calendar, at least. Like, you don't necessarily get a time off, but it's included in the calendar. And I think that took a lot of work to do, because there was a lot of pushback. Folks are like, well, this is a secular system. Why are we including this religious holiday? But like, hello, Christmas is a religious holiday, you know? We've sort of like, anything outside of like Judeo-Christian values tend to be foreign. But if we are living in an inclusive environment, and we have to begin to embrace and adopt these practices in order to include the experiences of everyone else, right? So that's how we celebrate. On to you, Shireen.
I also wanted to share, and then I know we're going to move on because I want to make sure that we start really talking about, again, to how to get folks to celebrate, you know, on the ground, right, as it were. So what I think, for me, the takeaway about Eid al-Fitr is that it's a time for community. It's a time for people getting together and breaking bread. It's a time for gifts for children. It's a time for people who haven't seen each other, and it's that one time of year that people get together. Understanding the universality of that human experience. Like, that's something that all societies, have, is that we mark a time. Actually, in Arabic, another thing that you'll hear, is the idea of كل سنة كل سنة وانتم طيبين. Every year, may every year find you well. There's many different variations depending on which Arabic variation you speak, but the idea is that, like, once a year, often these are the special people you'll get together with, and these are the opportunities to sort of like mark the passing of the year, have these celebrations that become traditions and rituals for our family, friends,
Right.
and yes, bringing in Muslims and non-Muslims to sort of just be aware, have that holiday awareness. I was also going to say I also offer DEI consulting for for a media company, for different organizations, and the idea of having floating holidays. So, again, kind of being more aware that we're in a very multicultural, multi-faith, we're in a society that has more multicultural,
Right.
multi-faith experiences. So offering floating holidays, for example, I think that would be amazing to come to the school spaces as well, right? So even if a district altogether isn't able to recognize, every single holiday for every single, different community, but to offer floating communities that don't affect or impact absences, because we know that absences are looked at by colleges, high schools for admissions, et cetera, right? So all kinds
Right.
of ways to be a little bit more flexible and malleable and bring people in.
Right.
And bringing people in and supporting spaces where people are welcome and included and equitable. I'm going to pass it now back to you. Talk to us, Sister Jehan, about best practices for supporting students Eid and beyond at the K through 12 level, and then I'll chime in after talking about college and beyond.
Shall we start with the pitfalls?
As I, we're
Okay, let's start
talking
with the
about from our lived
yes,
experiences as
yes.
being here ourselves in the world, our children, and our classroom awareness. So up to you. Go for
Okay,
it.
okay. Let's start with that. That way we can end with a lot of the positive. So, we're calling this pitfalls, but these are kind of things that you should not do. And these are things that a lot of us have seen. So, for example, let's remember, in my case, that students in K through 12 are still minors, and their families are still very heavily involved. PTAs and different parent groups, and this serves as both an opportunity. sometimes a missed opportunity, but it also, um, and myself and Shireen included, it we can educators can sometimes often rely too heavily on parents, Muslim parents, to do the heavy lifting, to do the labor, as opposed to districts hiring folks like us, Muslim educators and consultants, to come and provide guidance and advice and to help, set the groundwork. So that way, we're not kind of thinking about like Muslim or identity or how to be culturally responsive like in the moment, and it's not just like a one-off kind of thing. We want to think about systemizing these practices, so we're not, you know April, for example, is also Arab American Heritage Month. Like, educators should not be thinking about April, Arab American Heritage Month in April. This is something that should be discussed and prioritized and planned out in the summer. And that goes with other holidays or other occasions where folks either need time off or it's part of their cultural identity. We all need to feel seen and heard, right? We talk about this all the time. So some pitfalls are like making assumptions. So please don't make assumptions about Muslim students, their beliefs, or their practices based on stereotypes. Instead, approach each student as an individual and be respectful of their personal beliefs and experiences. And these beliefs and experiences are diverse. Muslims are not this one, ball of people that practice the same exact way. We, like Shireen mentioned earlier, some of us may have started on Monday, for example, fasting in Ramadan. Others may have started on Tuesday last month, So, and that means we're going to end and celebrate at different times. So don't make assumptions. Another thing is don't downplay holidays or ignore them. I think that is a really great way of erasing the identity and the culture of your students. So recognizing these holidays foster inclusivity and respect for diversity within the school community, and it obviously trickles down to the student body as well. So we as educators are role models and we set the tone for what happens in the classroom. So this will prevent like bullying and othering and all those other things. Another thing is please avoid cultural appropriation. Be cautious of cultural appropriation when incorporating elements of Muslim culture into the classroom for activities or events. Ensure indeed that these elements are presented in a way that's respectful and they're accurate. And again, the way you do that is hiring, actually we need to put our money where our mouth is, right? So hiring consultants, DEI, Muslim experts, consultants, educators to be able to pave the way. So you're not going to Google to just get your information, or you're going to blogs. I mean, I'm not discounting any of those spaces, but you want to get it where you want to go where the value is, right? You want to go where you're going to get the most accurate information. Lastly, I'll say another pitfall is sometimes teachers will pressure students to participate in classroom activities or events, and that conflict with their religious beliefs or practices. So I would say to combat that is to respect their choices as students and provide alternate options, for example, when necessary. So, and I'm going to go into what those are, for example, when we go into best practices, but I'll pass it back to you, Shireen, to go over some of the pitfalls.
Well, I think that, again, a lot of what you say at the K through 12 level, it filters up through into college, and particularly the point of development for young adults. So for me, it's college and beyond, right? Those early 20s where we're still forming identity and we're still sort of experiencing, students are experiencing the world now for the first time, navigating identity formation, identifying, how to cope with, executive functioning, balancing life, balancing social life, balancing exploring themselves, getting to understand relationships to themselves, to others, to society, their place in the world. And so, for me, when they're moving into the university level, we're now losing that contact directly with parents, right? And it's really about creating spaces to support and partner with young adults hand in hand, help them to start to gain the skills that they're going to need, not only to navigate through at university and get through their classes, but how to start to maybe as they go into the workforce. And as we talked about, for example, a thing would be, if they are able to work with HR when they finally graduate and go to a workplace where they would advocate for floating holidays, having 1 or 2 days where it's the floating holidays, right? These are the kind of accommodations, and this is the kind of things that they're learning at the university and college level. I think that one of the pitfalls, for example, at university level is that I think that we have experienced, those of us who follow a particular faith practice have experienced that the universities in America and the West at large try to, how can I say this? They try to maintain the veneer of secularism. And I think that it's time to evolve and to understand that we're not just teaching to a subject, we're not just teaching to the student that's in front of us in the classroom, we're teaching to the student and their whole selves. So understanding the person's holistic identity is understanding that an intrinsic part of people's identity is their faith and their cultural practices. And so I think that, we could, for example, then understanding that, it's not realistic, I think, to compartmentalize, right? So that somebody can just be like devoid and kind of like leave their practices at home. This is something that we want to work into, but to create a space where, again, too, there's the multiplicity and diversity of different accommodations, awareness, everything that you and I are talking about, quite frankly, for Muslim Americans is certainly something that we could talk about for all people of, various faith practices, but particularly I think for the faith practices not of the dominant faith in the country, right? So faiths from that historically are marginalized here, how can we start to bring more people into the fold? So that's something that I think is something to be aware of at the university level. Another thing that I think is something that I think about is that in the same way that here in the West, let's be honest, I think that all of us kind of write off the last week or two of the calendar year. Let's be very honest. By just middle of December, everyone's out. You're just assuming that everyone is just calling it in and they're busy. They've like 5 people in the office have taken vacation today. Some people are there, but they need to go to their kids' holiday program or whatever. And so I think the last 2 weeks, yes, some people are working, but everybody that's working is aware this is a time of grace. This is a time of patience. This is a time of flexibility. This is a time to sort of, be a little quieter as we, have people who are honoring a holiday. So a big thing I would say is that, for university, for college, for again, Eid and beyond, understanding that, for us, this is our holiday season. And so this is a time hopefully we look to all of those around us to have that grace, that patience, that flexibility for us. We're working with, at this point now, for the last 10 days, extreme exhaustion, extreme. I don't know anyone who's not tired. And we're also dealing with, people who have been fasting for 20 days plus. We're dealing with people who are turning their focus now to prayer and worship and service, community service and charity. So, a little bit of grace and compassion and empathy go a long way. Other pitfalls maybe are that, again, too, being aware that, even though the sick are exempt from fasting, there are some people who say, well, I have a health situation that I still think is tolerable, so I'm going to prioritize fasting. But in that case, for example, there might be some health issues that are arriving, or people may be acting differently, and we need to be aware of that. So for example, people who take ADHD medicine, and so thinking about if they normally take it at 8 o'clock in the morning, they're not taking it at 8 o'clock in the morning anymore. If they are waking up to have the pre-dawn meal, they're taking it maybe at 5 in the morning. So kind of understanding that if you're teaching a class later in the day, that just kind of being aware of that dynamic and having a little bit more grace. Make sure you keep in constant communication. More pitfalls. I think that the onus of navigating all this is falling on, again, the non-dominant faith practitioners, right? So we're the ones who have to kind of take a lot of energy and time to create lines of communication, to explain and educate, and so even for trying to explain, I'm going to need a day off, but I don't know when the day off is going to be. It could either be this day or that day. And I think that we've started to see that on social media. People talk about templates for work. People aren't talking about yet what does that mean when you're a teacher or a professor, because you have lesson plans and there's a lot more about passing it off. It makes a big difference this day or that day. So that's something, again, too, that I think that trying to, if we can have systemic change, like you said, for the universities to be more aware, for HR to be more aware, for student services to be more aware, then that kind of, again, too, it shifts the onus. It has it more, it creates more of a partnership dynamic.
Right.
And then I think one of the biggest ones is, again, too, the anxiety and the fear of always falling behind. We're falling behind. We're falling behind. Ramadan is actually, it's a beautiful time to kind of just raise heightened awareness and mindfulness around this, our connection for constant productivity and capitalism and always needing to produce at the highest possible level. And so for us, it's a welcome change. But if all those around us are still expecting us to sort of, be working at 110 maximum capacity, then that causes a lot of anxiety. And I know students, I know myself, that's something where we're always feeling like we just can't catch up. We just can't catch up. And I think, again, too, if we could have, those around us sort of say, we're aware, and we're all going to work together to find a way forward, I think that makes a big difference.
Hmm. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to quickly mention something because Abdul mentioned in the chat, he said that almost all DEI funding in Florida has been abolished recently by the legislator and the governor. And that reminds me of a couple of weeks ago, a mayor in Baltimore, like he was talking about, he was on the news and they called him a DEI mayor.
Yeah.
So there is an attack on the whole. I can't even call DEI an establishment because it's not established yet. There are different cities and states that have grant funded positions that allow for these trainings or workshops or different activities in order to increase diversity, inclusion, and equity. But there's definitely a countrywide attack on this thing called DEI. It's becoming the new like bad word or new
Mm-hmm.
slur, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really unfortunate, which is why systemic equity is important. So thank you so much, Shireen, for mentioning some of the pitfalls on the college level. I'm going to talk about some of the best practices. So these are things that um, educators at the K through 12 level, I have seen them do, or I recommend for them to do, is the very first thing is to educate yourself. Educate yourself about your students and Muslim holidays, Muslim culture, about Eid, understanding the significance and the customs of these holidays in order for you to first understand and respect these values. Because the more you know, the more you can grow, the more you can give, the more you can understand. Um, Another thing is, and I think you touched on it earlier, Shireen, is to accommodate absences. So if you work in a school district that does not recognize Eid as a holiday, for example, another thing that happened at Oakland Unified School District, while Eid was merely on the calendar, we collaborated closely with the attendance department and let them know, like, yo, this is when Eid is, this is when the second Eid is. So accommodate absences, be understanding of students who may need to miss school for these religious observations, and provide opportunities for them to make up the work. Another thing is obviously acknowledge the holiday, recognize the holiday in your classroom, even if it's not a systemic thing. You can decorate the classroom, you can put books up, you can have discussions, different workshops, you can bring in Muslim parents or Muslim educators. I've also seen, for example, assemblies that are focused on Eid. That's another idea. Another thing is to create inclusive spaces in order for Muslim students to be able to, um, one, have a space to go to when, there's an activity happening that's too physically straining, or it's like lunchtime and they obviously can't eat. So that goes such a long way. Like the leader, you're as an educator, you're the leader of the classroom. You're almost the president, right? So how you lead sets a tone for how comfortable the student feels, how seen they feel, how they can come up to you if they feel comfortable coming up to you, even because you have provided already that safe space. Um, Another thing is, there are some dietary restrictions and prayer times. So just to respect that that those things may happen throughout the day, or they may not happen. Just provide accommodations when
Mhm.
necessary, in order for students to be able to, there are those who don't fast for an array of reasons, and we can, I think you can maybe, do your research and get into that. We won't talk about that right now. But there are those who can't fast for different reasons, and there are those who are exempt from fasting. Um, Another great practice is to consult with Muslim educators about the needs of Muslim students during holidays and beyond. And we provide valuable insights and suggestions on how to best support these students during these times. And I will say again that teachers planning out their year in the summer, I know that we plan our year in the summer. So be mindful about including Ramadan and Eid into your lesson planning, into your test dates, into the events. Even if we don't know exactly when Eid or Ramadan will be, there's always a guesstimation. There we may be off a day or two or whatever, but there is this. We will know what month it's going to be, what week it's going to be potentially. That way, when the occasions come up, you're already ready and set to go. You already have your decorations in your bins, and you'll be able to your students will feel seen and heard, and that makes a world of a difference.
Absolutely. Well,
On to you.
I'm going to continue. I think obviously I'll just kind of like, continue these threads and trains, but again, how do they look at the higher education level? So, I mean, I hope that, everyone who's joining us, everyone who's, charged with caring for our teaching and learning communities, please check in on your Muslim students and faculty, fellow faculty, and staff. Right, just check in. Keep the lines of communication open, and again, too, let them be aware that you're aware, and it's on your radar. You're aware, and that you're sort of there and ready to lend a hand, to be an ally, to help advocate. And this again is, horizontally as well as vertically. On top of, again, as we talked about, maybe people who are navigating health challenges, just, again, too, maybe it's something where you're working with student services, maybe there are particular accommodations, again, like I said, for people who are taking medicine at a different time, or people because of fasting, whatever kind of health, even mental health, situations that are happening that again require a little bit more of a little bit more care. Another thing is that for HR and student services, you talked about DEI. I think that we're in an era right now. We're seeing that we're in a quite historic era where the semantics of words and word choices and what they mean is something that is in play, and it's being used, unfortunately, for political agendas, right? So there's a lot of sort of, the machinations of, acrobatics of what words mean. And so maybe I'm actually, as a DEI, someone who's in the DEI support practice, but maybe I'm saying release the word DEI, release the title of DEI, and just think about, ways that we show up in the world that create places that are safe, that are inclusive, that are culturally responsive, right, to different identities, different lived experiences. And if the name DEI now is kind of being used, and they're playing ball back and forth, for different political reasons, but that's something that, we can release that, and we can just understand these are ways of being kind and empathetic and caring in the world. And so, for example, for HR or student services, I find that for me, I'm speaking personally now, it's often me kind of writing the letters, and, this is what the Eid is, and this is what's happening from day to day. And Eid doesn't have a fixed date because of the calendar. It's literally what we're doing now, right? So imagine if there was like a letter, or an email that goes out at the beginning of the month, or ahead of the beginning of the month, to faculty, to school community, right, to explain some of the minutia of, again, too, why are certain people celebrating certain times, etc. So I think that, the education piece, let's take that to heart as educators. I also think that, at the college level, if we say, for example, that a paper is due at 5 p.m., it's just, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for other educators, but if a paper is due at 5 p.m. online, on Canvas, on Google, right, it could just as well be due at 11 p.m., right, for students. That's an easy accommodation, and it's a matter of a few hours, but to let them maybe break their fast, grab a coffee, be able to have a little bit more, cognitive functioning so that you can go over and edit, they can make the changes, they can double check the math and really have it in with a little bit more confidence. That's an easy, accommodation. But also I think just in general, accommodations around dates. Is there something where, I have a class on a Friday? Is there something where, a due date could be moved to a Saturday where students have slept a little bit more, they've been able to sleep in? Little small changes, but they make a world of a difference at the college level and beyond. I think that programming, there's a lot of programming on campus. We're moving into the final few weeks of school, so it's a lot of really great programming. People don't want to miss out. When I was on the PTA or the PTO, we would have awareness that different parents have different schedules. This was before the days of Zoom, so to be clear. But we would have some of the meetings in person in the morning and some of the meetings in person after after work hours around 6 or 7 or so, to accommodate and understand that people have different schedules. So certainly, please continue to have these wonderful events during the day. Absolutely. Muslim students who are fasting will participate to the extent they can, but alternating maybe some of the events being moved to evenings. And then I think I'll just say a couple last words around the importance of safety, particularly now, understanding that students are experiencing, perhaps due to civil engagement, due to political engagement, they might be experiencing impediments to their safety, right? So actual safety in terms of being doxxed, in terms of being maybe followed, or harassed in such way. So I know that there are, working with Title IX offices, working with, again, to making sure that there are trusted allies around to make sure that we're even physically safe. We know that right now, the events that are happening in Gaza, when we're watching the atrocities that are happening, the humanitarian crisis, the genocide in Gaza, we're aware that for Muslims and non-Muslims alike, this is something very, very hard to experience. And so, the idea of so many people in the millions and millions around the world going out and protesting weekend after weekend, day after day, and feeling like we're not being seen by our elected officials. So that idea of not being seen, what a wonderful opportunity to intentionally create spaces where people feel seen, and people feel welcome. And on my last note, I'll just say, be kind. That's my best, that's my best practice. Be kind.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. You said a lot and you shared a lot of gems, mashallah. And I hope that folks can, implement a lot of these strategies and suggestions. I know that you said let's kind of do away with the semantics, and I'm cool with that too. And I think what is there's an interesting shift happening right now. There are a lot of businesses and even institutions that are performing right now. There's like a Ramadan Mubarak. We even heard from the White House, the administration, Ramadan Mubarak, at the same time that Biden is sending billions of arms to Israel.
Mhm.
So it's like there's also a happy Arab American Heritage Month, which I said it was this month of April. Um, at the same time that the US is sending arms to annihilate and slaughter Arab lives in Palestine and also in other parts of the world. Yemen is going through it, Sudan, the Congo. There are a lot of places around the world. You're
Still,
making me
this is
laugh.
gonna go viral, like the thing where the guy had the cat, and I don't know what I did. Oh my God, I'm
Oh
back.
my God, that's so funny.
I'm gonna cut it out. I'm gonna cut it out.
You made me lose my train of thought. No,
I'm
that's
so
cool. That's
sorry.
cool. We need some laughter in all of this. Yeah, I was just saying that I'm afraid that we went from like this forced assimilation where people are expected to like let go of their identity and like show up,
Yeah.
even though they're fasting, show up even though the things that they're showing up for go against their values, for example. And then we've moved into this like weird area where we're like, okay, we will see some of y'all. We're willing to see some of y'all as long as you fit into these boxes. And now we're moving towards like, okay, actually, this is costing too much money. We're going to dismantle DEI,
Mhm.
but we'll be able to share your Ramadan Mubaraks every year or your Eid Mubaraks. And I just hope that folks that are working with students of color that are will be able to take heed of all of these messages, all of these strategies, all of these suggestions, because despite what's happening out in the, ethos, you have so much more. We have so much more control in our classroom, right? Like we can bring supplemental books, curriculum, voices, decorations, visuals, in order to really visibilize students that have felt unseen since forever. You know, even their parents have felt unseen. Like I'm a parent of four, and I used to have to do all those things with the letters and the emails and all that kind of stuff. So I hope that you know everything that we're sharing, it's all adoptable, it's doable. And if y'all have any other questions, feel free to DM us and contact us. We do also offer virtual trainings for institutions and organizations and businesses and things like that. And we do have a free guide that we created that we will share. Can we share it now?
I'm not sure if we can share. I think we can put the link in the
In our stories.
in this in I think we put the link in the comment after this gets posted to our.
Okay, we'll do that. So check out the resource guide in the comment section later on for a free little tidbit. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sister Jehan. Once again, I apologize. I was trying to.
It's all good.
I had a student, Ran, who just posted and said, "Thank you, Shireen. I wish that we talked about this more at one of the universities where I teach." And I went to go press something to try to do a heart emoji, but I turned into a pharaoh. So sorry. Now you see what filter is the most common filter for me as an Egyptian.
I know, right? I need to learn how to do that myself.
I wanted to just offer a heart emoji. So I'm going to kind of do it the old-fashioned way so that I don't press any more buttons. But I wanted to say again, thank you, Sister Jehan, and thank you for everyone who was able to join. This is something that we'll be posting, and there's much more where this came from because we can customize, particular accommodations. Obviously, right now we're talking about broad from kindergarten to college. Thank you, Ren. Yes, because of you, I turned into a pharaoh. Ren. You said something lovely, and I tried to. We're going to be posting this because right now we're doing really broad base from kindergarten to college is quite the journey and beyond, right? And so please, feel free to reach out to us and we can customize something and have conversations, meaningful conversations about how to support our teaching and learning communities for Muslim Americans and for everyone. So thank you, everyone. Please, if there's any questions you have, please, we'll post them in the comments, reach out to us privately. And you can also feel free to suggest what else would you guys like to see us talk about. After Ramadan and Eid, we're more than happy to continue these conversations. So thank you again for everyone for joining. Eid Mubarak, sister.
Eid Mubarak. Eid Mubarak to you and everyone else who's watching. Take care.
Salam alaikum.
Salam.